Oh, here's somebody else's every Pixies album ranked. There, let's see. They have Indie Cindy ahead of Trump Lamont.
What?
And Beneath the Eyrie is also ahead of Trump Lamont. And Head Carrier is also ahead of Trump
Are
Lamont.
you fucking kidding me?
Hey! I'm Menon.
Welcome back for another edition of Snob versus Douche. He's the snob, and I'm the douche. Today we're doing something a little different, just for fun. We're doing a little fun exercise, I guess, in celebration of the Pixies releasing their latest LP here, I guess, a couple weeks back. We're going to rank, what are we going to call it, our favorite Pixies LPs or our top? These are the greatest Pixies LPs of all time.
Yep.
In no particular order. And there's
top
no question.
10 definitive Pixies records.
Yeah, okay. We're going to do it. We'll do it in an order, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's what we're doing today. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Still backlogged from all the music that came out in September. But I made some time to touch base with the Pixies again. I mean, one of my favorite bands. But I hadn't revisited the original albums or really the more recent albums in a really long time. So it was a good, spent some hours re-reviewing some stuff and getting familiar with it again.
Yeah, definitely one of a hugely influential band to a lot of the music that we like. Yeah, and I'm kind of in the same boat where it had been a while since I listened to those early albums, like actively listened.
Yeah.
Some of them you just wind up hearing.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're so into new music like we are, you don't have a lot of time to get nostalgic and listen to your favorites from years ago. But yeah, it was fun. Gained a couple insights, got a couple little surprises. Nothing too major. I rank them around how I originally thought I would.
That's interesting. So so did you kind of have a ranking in mind and then went back?
I did.
That's what I did also, and I would say that my top 5 changed from what I did initially to after I did a couple big listening sessions.
Yeah.
And I wound up changing the order of the top 5.
Yeah, mine shuffled just a little bit. Nothing too major though. And it was about what I expected, given the more recent, the post reunion output. I guess.
What are your thoughts on The Night the Zombies Came? That's the album that just came. Let's just give a couple brief thoughts before we jump into our ranking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here.
How
did you feel about it?
Well,
as we're sitting here, it's only been out less than 2 weeks, or maybe 2 weeks exactly. Yeah. No,
yeah, and I think both of us have probably only listened to it a handful of times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we're going to include it just for fun.
What?
We're going to include it in our ranking just for fun.
Yeah. I liked it better than I thought I was going to.
Okay.
Given the other post-reunion output.
Okay.
Lyrically, obviously, given the title of the album, leans a little heavy on, I don't know if Frank Black is just getting high and watching a bunch of horror movies. But there's definitely a zombie motif in a couple of the songs, I would say. Or just horror in general, or monster movies, or I'm not really sure what's going on there. But, looking back on his output throughout the Pixies, I guess he has been in the habit of sort of picking out strange subject matter and writing songs about it. So I guess it fits into that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's some decent songs. But overall, it sort of fits into that sort of, I don't know, just not. It just doesn't live up to the original output, but which is not surprising. I feel bad, giving them a hard time about it because they are one of my favorite bands, but post the 2000, post the reunion is just something missing.
Yeah, their output over a 4-year span from 87 to 91 is so good.
Yeah.
It's just hard to, it's always going to be hard to live up to
20,
that.
30 years later, after so many solo records, how is anyone gonna match up to some of the greatest like indie rock songs ever? So it's I hate being so negative about their output at all, but that's just the reality.
Do you dislike, actually actively dislike any of these? Well, I guess when we get to the ranking, let me just tell you what I think about
Yeah.
I'm pretty middle with this one versus the others. Post reunion. I don't dislike it. I don't especially like it, with the caveat that I've only listened to it a few times at most. I think it's about what I had expected. I don't like the album cover.
I don't either.
I don't know what's going on.
I don't like the name.
The Night the Zombies Came.
I think that's an odd choice, but who am I? I'm just a snob.
Yeah, I read I don't remember. I read something about Frank Black talking about the album title but I don't remember. So this is kind of pointless for me to even bring up. So the way we're going to do this, the albums in our top 5, we have not discussed what they actually are, but our top 5 albums are the same in probably different, and for sure different order. So we're going to do those. I mean, we were always going to do a countdown 10 to 1, but we're just going to kind of chunk up the 10 to 6, the second half. We're just going to bounce back and forth with what they are. We probably won't have a lot to say about those, but if we do, we'll chime in. And then probably the meat of this is going to be the top 5, which,
And just as a sort of a caveat to people wondering, there's only 9 full-length records. We're counting their debut release, Come On Pilgrim, which was technically back then an EP as a full-length.
It was not an EP. It was technically a mini LP.
Even technically still a mini LP back then? Okay.
So I used to really pay attention. I used to really pay attention to this stuff at one point, but it sometimes it's different in different countries, the rules.
Yeah.
Like single can't have more than a certain amount of tracks to be counted as a single. So like those UK singles would have, I think, 3 tracks. And this changed at different times. Can only have 3 tracks to be considered a single. If it was more, like if it was 4, 5, or 6. And then there's also time. There's a bunch of rules.
I think we should probably talk about this for at least 15 minutes. This should be the bulk of this episode.
It's technically a mini LP because it has 8 tracks. If it had 6 tracks, it would be an EP.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing.
It is.
And this is for chart purposes. And that's, I believe we're jumping right to those albums.
Yeah.
Yes,
We can talk about more about the EP.
We're going to count "Come On Pilgrim" as an entry on the list.
Yeah.
It's technically a mini LP. Yeah, but we're going to count it on here just to make it around 10. Yeah.
Well, should we just? Do you want me to start with my number 10?
Yeah, go ahead. What's your number 10 album of the Pixies? Your number 10 best Pixies album of all
Yes.
time.
Exactly, of all time. Beneath the Eyrie. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing it right. It was their 2018 release. Technically, their eighth full length or eighth release.
Right.
Yeah, that one fell completely flat for me.
Okay, so that's your number 10. My number 10 is 2016 LP called Head Carrier.
Okay. My number 9 is Head Carrier.
Okay. My number 9 is Indie Cindy from 2014.
My number 8 is Indie Cindy.
My number 8, I put the Night the Zombies Came, the 2024 album. I put it at number 8. So I put it in the middle of the 5 reunion or post reunion non-Kim Deal albums.
Yeah, I went with Doggerel next
for number 7.
As number 7. Yep, which came out in 2022, right before this one. Yeah.
So I went with Beneath the Eyrie at number 7, the 2019 LP. What's your number 6?
Number 6 is The Night the Zombies Came.
Okay, so you really you liked it more than any of the other reunion records.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. For whatever reason, I think it had the highest number of songs. I was like, this is pretty good.
Okay. No, that's good. So my number 6, I put Doggerel, the 2022 album. I really do feel like but a couple really quick caveats. Of course, the new album I haven't listened to a ton. I do feel like I could be talked into a lot of switching on these. Like I don't have a lot of conviction.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of conviction about anything.
I could flop any of these around a bit. Yeah. There's not a whole lot of difference.
For whatever reason, I happen to listen to Doggerel and Beneath the Eyrie maybe a bit more than Indie Cindy and Head Carrier over these years.
Yeah.
I feel, and so I have some, like I say, I could probably switch them up. I don't know if there's a lot of controversy. I know some people really like these records probably more than it sounds like either of us do. Like I've heard from people that really like it. And I don't really hate any of them.
No.
Yeah, just without question for me, a significant gulf exists between these post-reunion releases and that original run, which is one of the best 4-year runs of all time. So you can't really fault it that's the case.
Absolutely. No, I was lining it all up, putting the data in, and I was like, wow, from 1987 to 1991, they released a lot of great music. So it's impressive.
No question.
But yeah. We're the meat of the discussion here is the top 5 Pixies albums of all time, right?
The top 5 greatest Pixies albums of all time.
Yep.
Including one mini LP.
Yep. Now I will say, not to get back into this, but when you go to allmusic.com, which is one of my sources for music information, it's listed as an EP. But
well, they need to do their research.
you need to log in and suggest a correction, I think. Sounds like.
I will say, since we're coming up on this, that I think that the original, just, you know, because of my age, I think the original way that I would have heard Come On Pilgrim was on the CD that was Surfer Rosa and Come On Pilgrim. I think.
Same for me.
I could be wrong, but I think that's the way that which was oddly, I believe, Surfer Rosa first, and then Come On, even though they're released in the opposite order. Almost like they just tacked it on as a bonus.
Yeah,
I do know, and also before we like the Pixies' original output was much more, I think, was more successful or like commercially in Europe than it was in the US. I believe that Come On Pilgrim even charted in the UK. I think all of them charted in the UK. Some of them did in the US also, but just not as well. But so I guess what I'm trying to say is some of a certain age, depending on where they live, may have come to Come On Pilgrim as its own thing, you know, at that time.
Depending on your age.
Right.
Yeah.
We're too young, I would say, for that to be the case. Yeah, I mean, you could have certainly, but we would have been pretty young. But yeah, so why don't you start with your number 5 greatest Pixies album of all time?
Yeah, and I'm just realizing that I'm probably going to murder the pronunciation, but it's Tremblement is my number 5. Yeah, 1991. It was their last record before they officially broke up, and it did not include any Kim Deal songs, although she was still in the band technically and did backup vocals on some of them, things like that.
But she plays on the record.
Yeah, she's in the band.
I know what you're saying. Yeah,
but there was a rift, and anyway, we don't need to get into the hot goss.
Yeah, from 30 I don't know a lot of the hot goss.
Yeah,
I do. I guess more so here than in some cases.
Yeah, and this one was commonly thought of as Frank Black's solo record. I've heard this before for other bands. I did not realize that was the case with this one. So that's kind of interesting, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the post-reunion albums could just as easily be Frank Black albums.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. Yeah.
I would agree with that. But I'm not saying that they shouldn't be. I'm sure. Well, I actually know. Like, obviously, there's more attention for a Pixies album than an album that's just Frank Black, even if it's the exact same material.
Yeah,
and also having seen, like, I think the last 2 times I saw Frank Black and the Catholics live were very sparsely attended in comparison to the Pixies reunion. You know what I'm saying? Like,
oh yeah,
I get the reason to use the Pixies. I'm just saying, to me, the Tremblement is more of a Pixie if you're going to say full band album versus the reunion.
But to me, listening to the whole output in the past week or so, it does seem like they are sticking to the Pixies thing comparatively to Frank Black solo records. Certainly he is the driving creative force and always has been. But I think he, it seems to me that the band is consciously making a decision to stick to almost a Pixies formula.
Sure.
Maybe that's unfair. Yeah. I'm not sure, but it's certainly post reunion. And I mean, honestly, if I were them, I'd be doing the same thing.
Right. I'm
you know,
not. Yeah, I
yeah,
certainly am not
touring
faulting them for doing it.
and getting money. But I do think that it must be financially, like motivated. I mean, I think that is the main thing here
Oh,
that brought them back together.
I don't think there's any
Yeah,
doubt.
yeah,
I don't think there's any
yeah, exactly.
certainly way more popular than they were back then, and get the money, I guess. Get the money.
Have you actually seen them live, either
Ye-
before or after
I've
reunion?
I've only after, and only
Okay,
one of the earlier, the actual full
the
band,
pre 2014. Yeah,
right, and not after and not before.
sure.
I've seen Frank Black a bunch of times. I've seen the Breeders a bunch of times. So the other things I have, but yeah.
I haven't seen any of them. Missed out, but yeah. Anyway, so what's your number
Anyway,
5?
so my number 5, I went with "Come On Pilgrim," and mostly just because I feel like it's at a disadvantage as far as the um, less songs, shorter runs. It's half as long. No, not quite, but almost. It's almost half. It's almost. It's just over half as long as the rest of the albums, basically, which are basically approximately 40 minutes. The top 4 albums
Sure.
on my list are all 40 minutes, and
Yep.
this is around 20. Anyway, I don't really have anything to say. I think that the highs on "Come On Pilgrim" stand with the highs on any of the other albums, but some of the other tracks don't necessarily rate as high for me. Maybe a couple of them at least,
Okay.
but still excellent. Like the rest of these all are for me.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
I don't know if I mentioned this. I probably did, but when I have ranked these albums before listening to them. Did we already talk about this? And I wound up changing them in ways I didn't expect to after I sat down
Yeah.
and re-listened to them. So anyway, what's your number 4?
Surfer Rosa.
Okay.
Yeah, 1988. This was their first official, regardless of what you're following on EP rules, first official full-length release. Yeah, that's my number 4. I don't really have much else to say. I think it has their most well-known song on it. Other than that, I feel like it's uneven. It's kind of, and this is kind of a thing with Pixies albums is, they do some surf stuff, some instrumental stuff in between the really good songs. And that's kind of how I feel with this record.
Okay, that's interesting. My number 4 is Trompe le Monde.
Okay.
I think that I this is one where I switched it up. Some days I feel really like this is a very underrated album. Like I feel like it's kind of people are harder on it for some of the reasons that we discussed, that people see it as Frank Black first solo album.
Yeah,
they don't like that Kim Deal was kind of backseated on it and that kind of stuff. It's a more harder hitting album than the 2 that came before it. I think it's almost metal a little bit even.
Sure.
But anyway, I like I say, I'm kind of splitting hairs, and a lot of these things have been shifted around for me, but I'm going with it at number 4. Whereas I could almost, on a different day, I could even move it up a slot or down a slot. But yeah, so that's
had I had a little bit more time, it might have landed differently for me on these top 5. But yeah, so number 3 for me is Bossa Nova. Their 1990 release. It's their 4th full-length record. This is sort of the first record after the big Frank Black Kim Deal rift, and where you start to see, and I think maybe it was right around this time or right after, is when she formed the Breeders and sort of started doing her own thing. But yeah,
I think it might have been right before that.
Right before that,
I might not have might have the timeline wrong. It's around there. If it wasn't right before, it was right around there.
Yep.
All right, yeah. So my number 3 is also Bossa Nova, the 1990 album.
We can agree on one thing so far.
Yeah, that might be it. Yeah, so listening to it, I just listening to this again yesterday. It's a little, again, with an album, I think this is an excellent album. But if I'm nitpicking, it's a little bit uneven in spots for me, where the highs are much higher than some of the lesser cuts on it.
Yep.
But I will say, for a long time, this was the album that I would probably reach for most. I think partially because some burnout of some of the the ones that are more more commonly hearing, I guess. And there's certain aspects to it that are a little more unique to it that I like. I'm not sure I don't think I can express it, but there's certain intangibles to it that I like a bit more than some of the other ones.
Yep.
Anyway.
Okay.
Getting down to it.
Number 2?
Yeah, the number 2 greatest Pixies album of all time.
Of all time is Come On Pilgrim. For me, is that one. Just for whatever reason, and given the fact that it comes tagged on, or at least how I listen to it, comes tagged on to the end of Surfer Rosa, for whatever reason, I can clearly see in my review a difference between the two, and my the review. I just like those songs way better. It's less uneven. It's just right out of the gate. It's more condensed. Great songs on it. Yeah, good stuff.
That's it. Yeah, that's interesting. So my number 2 is Surfer Rosa.
Okay.
1988. There's actually I know people that only like Surfer Rosa and don't like the other ones. It is a different,
weird.
Because Steve Albini produced it.
Yeah.
Maybe you could say kind of hits a little harder than certainly Doolittle and Bossa Nova. Maybe it's an extremely influential album. Obviously, all of these really are in our top 5s here, but yeah, and just what's interesting to me, as a quick aside, what is that? Where is my mind? That's on there, right? That's the song that you think is their most popular song.
It is.
I think that it is now.
It is now.
I don't know. I don't know that it was then. I don't know if in 1992, let's say, that you would have said that's their most. I don't think so.
I feel like it got really popular because I started noticing it maybe like 2010s. At some point, it started showing up everywhere. It was on.
I believe that it must have been used in movies and TV shows that gave it traction. I had a conversation. I was talking to somebody about, I don't remember what we were talking about, but the song came up, and they, I think, had only recently even heard it. This is not that long ago.
Yep.
And I said, I mentioned, I'm like, that's like, from like this one of the best albums of the 80s, and they couldn't believe that the song was from the 80s because they had just heard it, and they just assumed it was something from whatever the 90s at some point. But
yeah, I mean, that's just
it's interesting.
They
Yeah.
were. Yeah.
Anyway, again, a lot of this stuff I could shift around. And actually, I will tell you, initially, I had Surfer Rosa at number 1 on my list before
Okay.
going back. But anyway, so now we're up to your number 1. Which
Well,
I
it's
assume we
actually
both
your
have the
number
same
1 as
number 1.
well, because we only have one left, and that's Doolittle. 1989. It's their third release, and it's, you know, I think easily the creative pinnacle of their career. It's, you know, they both of the songwriters, Black Francis and Kim Deal, were firing on all cylinders. A lot of great tunes on that one, just start to finish. There's really not any filler. It's just, yeah, it's just a great record.
Yeah, I feel I really have not listened to this record in full in a long time, and I had extreme burnout from it because
Okay.
it's the everyman's Pixies record. If a man on the street, a person on the street, has one album by the Pixies, like a regular one of the studio albums, it's going to be Doolittle.
I feel like now that's changed, and it's Surfer Rosa.
So maybe, so maybe, definitely in the '90s.
Yeah.
If somebody was pulling out a Pixies record that didn't have a lot of, you know, albums,
Yeah.
they were going to have Doolittle. I probably heard Doolittle 100 times in like bars, like
Okay.
where they would play the whole thing. I probably working at the record store. How many times? Endless amounts of. Oh, we're doing this one again. This one. So I have a bit of burnout. But
Okay.
And I feel like when I originally was making my list before actually going back and listening, I feel like there was a time where I'm like, I don't need to listen to this. I've heard it.
Sure.
I have literally heard it into the thousands of times in its entirety. It is that good, though. It really is just so. Yeah, the whole thing is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's just so good.
Yeah. So a couple side notes.
Okay.
Well, our question: which Pixies record was your first Pixies record, and can you remember?
So I believe I bought Trompe Le Monde in 1991.
Okay.
And so that would be my first, and then I went backwards, obviously.
Yeah, that's funny because I think Trompe Le Monde was also my first record, which is a weird record to start with for them.
I think it's, you know, because we're a little bit younger. I feel like if we're 5 years older, we'd be different.
But I didn't buy it until it must have been 1995. I feel like I didn't get into them until way later, so they had already had, you know, they were.
Yeah, it would have been 91 or 92 for me.
Yeah,
probably 90.
Yeah.
Might have been 92.
Do you have a favorite Pixies song?
I don't know. Would you have a favorite Pixies song?
I
I'm
mean,
really bad
if
at
I
these
was,
kinds of things, because
what'd you say?
I'm really bad at these kinds of things. Questions.
Yeah, no, I'm not great at it either. But I guess if I was thinking about it, and I was like, I would probably pick just off the top of my head. I mean, doing no research, I could do research and figure it out, right? I could re-review and listen to the first 5 records again. Valoria has always been one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah,
that just sticks out to me for whatever reason. It's just such a great
I feel
song.
like I would have a hard time singling something out.
Mm-hmm.
If I was looking at the titles, I could probably think of it a little better.
Yeah. Where's My Mind is your favorite, I think, actually.
It's a great song.
It is. It is. And very unique for its time. So, yeah. And I did want to mention, as I mentioned earlier, sort of just a quick honorable mention of the side projects, right? And the solo work. So
Okay.
obviously, Frank Black has many releases under Frank Black and the Catholics, and Black Francis. There's some stuff that came out as he released as Black Francis in the sort of the middle period for whatever reason. But I will say that actually, above all of the Pixies output, one of my favorite records of all time is Teenager of the Year.
Wow.
I would rate that above Doolittle.
Wow.
Yep. I thought that would probably surprise you.
So I love that record. Also, I don't think I would put it that high. I don't think I could put it that high. But I also probably have not listened to that record in a long time. A long
Yeah.
time. I was really enamored with it when it came out. I felt like it should have been more popular than it was.
Yep. It's actually I think it's the 30th year anniversary or whatever. They're reissuing it.
Okay.
And so you'll be able to get it soon on gold vinyl if you want. I might pick it up because it's like I said, one of my favorite records.
You must. It sounds like you must.
Yeah,
like it's not even an option.
Those first three Frank Black records are really good. That's his second. The rest of
the first one is, to me, the first two are fantastic.
Yep.
I like the third one also, but the first two are fantastic.
The rest of it, though,
how do you feel about Frank Black? You don't like Frank Black and the Catholics albums?
I used to. I just don't, and I've listened to many of them. I just don't really remember any of it. It never really stuck out.
The first two Frank Black and the Catholics records I thought were quite good, and I feel like it kind of sputtered out. But
obviously, the Breeders and Kim Deal, the first two Breeders records are, also really great, and are probably on the same level as the first five Pixies records. I would say the last two, little bit like the post-reunion Pixie stuff. It's just I never really enjoyed it. Have you listened to those at all?
Yes, but not much.
Yeah.
They aren't favorites, I guess.
No.
And, Kim Deal has a solo record coming out this year, actually.
Yeah, it comes out November 22nd. Yep. That's her first official solo record. And then there's a side project that many fans may not know of, and I say this because I didn't even know about it, and I feel like I'm a pretty big fan. There's a side project called Grand Duchy, and it's actually Violet Clark's band, which is Frank Black's wife, and Frank Black plays in her band with her. Grand Duchy has two records out, one 2009 and one in 2012. I don't remember the titles of them off the top of my head, but there was a couple decent songs on there, interesting stuff.
I don't think that I've listened to those.
Yeah, I would say I listened to, I think it was either the first one or the second one. I heard it in a shop we were at, and I was like, this actually is better than the post-reunion Pixies.
Oh, wow.
So there's some good stuff there. Certainly, if you're a fan, check them out. But yeah, that's all I had.
The amps.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, amps.
Yep.
That's
Kim Deal.
That just might end up being
right?
A one-off, like a one album. Or was there two? One album.
I do not remember.
Yeah, I don't know that the full album stands up to the level of the these other ones that we were talking about, but that has some really good moments and it's strong overall.
Yep. All right, there you have it.
Yeah. So that's it. We've determined that Doolittle is the greatest Pixies album of all time, and it's not really disputable.
Yeah,
Um,
set in stone.
even though I wishy-washed on it, it's still indisputable.
Well, any record that I forced to listen to and have heard thousands of times, yeah, I would probably waffle on that as well. That's a lot.
Yeah. All right. So that's the Pixies. Thanks for I guess hanging out for this fun little exercise. I don't know if we'll do another. Um, we'll see.
Yeah, we should probably just end it.
Yeah. Let's just go
All
ahead
right.
and end it.